Every year, more than 3 billion air passengers head for the skies. The vast majority return safely to Earth without incident. But a small number experience life-changing moments they will never forget.
It was like a war zone in the sky.
We hear first-hand accounts from the passengers and pilots who have lived through the most shocking extremes of air travel.
Went on the wildest teacup ride you could ever imagine.
From great escapes
Run, it's gonna blow.
to mad moments and controversial cash demands
This is now going to cost you £24,000.
to catastrophic crash landings.
The plane just sunk like a stone and crashed into the ground.
In the age of the smartphone, these events are caught on camera as never before.
Awesome.
We reveal exclusive footage never seen on television. So keep your seatbelt fastened for the world's wildest flights. In this episode of World's Wildest Flights, horrendous holdups on the flight from hell.
We're just on the plane, not understanding why we're just sitting there. We're in the middle of a runway. We can see the airport, and we can see that the airport is completely dark. It's just bizarre.
The ups and downs of highway landings.
It's definitely something I don't teach in driving school, how to avoid a plane.
Holy
And terror at over 10,000 feet, halfway across the Pacific Ocean.
The pilot at this point is telling us that it's going to be an emergency landing and that it may be necessary for us to ditch in the ocean. So it's really at this point that I know is quite serious.
October 2016, Chicago, USA. Hard-working Illinois healthcare professionals Peter and Kathy McLeod haven't had a holiday for more than a year. So they've come down to Chicago O'Hare Airport, ready to fly out for a well-earned break.
We were both excited about getting out of Chicago and just kind of relaxing for a week.
We were going on a cruise, on a flight into Miami. Got to the airport on time. I'm very, very nervous when I fly. So we try to leave early just so I can calm down a little, get something to eat, not focus on the flight.
The couple have developed a pre-flight ritual to help settle Kathy's nerves.
We have kind of a routine that we go through whenever we fly together, where I'll take a window seat and she'll sit next to me. Part of our ritual is once we're strapped in and getting ready to, go down the runway for a takeoff, we hold hands.
For some reason that day, I was ultra nervous. And I mentioned that to my husband.
David Schwartz is an aircraft mechanic for FedEx Express, based at O'Hare Airport.
So we clocked out at 14:30 and we started walking through the Jet Bridge Tunnel, which is a glass tunnel about 100 yards long. And out about 300-400 meters is a runway, and we saw a 767 rolling out.
On board the plane, there is no indication of the shocking events about to unfold.
Everything normal, the flight attendants going through their safety instructions, and we were speeding down the runway. And, I could tell we were about, halfway down the runway. We should be lifting off any second.
Then I hear this boom, and it's huge. It's so loud.
The right-hand engine of Flight 383 exploded into flames after the plane had hit a terrifying 150 miles per hour.
I looked at Kathy, she looked at me, and then I turned to my right, and I saw fire.
And I'm thinking, no. And so I look over and I hear screaming, I see people getting up and running, and then I realize it's on fire.
Fire was spreading really fast down the side of the plane. And it was moving pretty quick.
I started filming. As you can see, the whole plane was pretty much engulfed in flames on the right side. I'd say about 100 feet in the air, the flames well over the tail of the aircraft, so it was bad. There was fuel everywhere.
The high-pressure turbine disc fractured into at least 4 different sections, and the engine shattered, spraying out high-speed debris. One fragment landed more than half a mile away. Damage from the engine failure causes a fuel leak, feeding a huge fire beneath the right wing.
People were screaming, babies were crying, people were pushing. People on the right side of the wing were all moving towards our side of the wing.
I remember my husband saying, we gotta go, it's gonna blow.
Oh, wow. I felt bad because I was like, if she hadn't married me, she wouldn't be here right now. I thought we weren't gonna get off the plane, that there would be an explosion and that it would just be really, really bad.
July 2017, Long Island, New York. One local resident is reaching for the skies, but he's about to experience a completely new way of coming back down to Earth.
As a kid, I would always dream about flying, so I got my helicopter license first, and subsequently got an airplane license, a seaplane license, and a whole bunch of other ratings through the past 28 years.
And after nearly 3 decades of adventures in aviation, James is set for a short hop out of Brookhaven Airport on Long Island.
I was planning on flying to Long Beach Island, New Jersey, to visit my girlfriend and her family and friends.
It seems like a straightforward start to the trip in his Cessna 206.
Well, I did my power checks and my magneto checks, and I throttled it up a couple times, so I had control over the engine at that time and took off normally.
Thomas Lupski is heading to a job along Sunrise Highway, a busy road between the Hamptons and Brooklyn.
I was on my way to work. I'm a realtor on Long Island, and I had an appointment later on that day, so I was kind of in a rush.
A few hundred feet above Long Island, James becomes aware that his plane is losing power.
I realized that visually, not through instruments, that I wasn't climbing. I realized it felt like I was flat, or even maybe descending. And then I looked at my airspeed. I was like, oh my God, I'm doing 80. I should be doing 150. This is like something that you really don't want to happen.
A bolt has disconnected on his throttle mechanism, so James can't pump enough fuel into the engine.
You know, it's my oldest daughter's birthday that day. So my thought was, oh my God, I hope I'm not gonna die on my daughter's birthday. And then I just thought to myself, I just gotta keep flying the airplane.
James's initial instinct is to head back to base.
And then I started a turn, nice slow left turn back towards the airport. I figured I'd try to get it back to the airport. And as soon as I turned, I realized that that was not going to happen, because now it was downwind, I was descending even faster.
Thomas is making good time along Sunrise Highway.
Normally that road is backed up. After 3:30, 4 o'clock, it gets backed up, so it was middle of the day. I think it was around 1 o'clock. There was no traffic.
As the plane lurches towards the ground, James spots potential salvation in the form of a plowed field.
I'm probably 150 feet above the tree line, so I was gonna land in a field. And oh my God, I'm gonna damage the airplane. I saw right over the tree line, I could see cars, just the tops of the cars. I really literally said, God, just get me over the tree line and I'll figure out what to do from there.
It was just barely made it over the trees. And I realized something was the matter right away.
Sunrise Highway does share some of the key characteristics of an airport landing strip.
I saw it as an advantage because it was a flat surface and it was wide enough for the wings so I wouldn't hit anything.
But there are other features you wouldn't expect on a conventional runway.
But you have the obstructions of overpasses and wires and signs, and all that stuff was right there when I turned.
I realized something was really wrong when he made a right-hand turn and was flying with the highway.
What the?
I was worried about the cars being under me because I really couldn't see. And then just as I saw the wires, I was thinking, oh my God, wires, because that's one of the things that you worry about when you have to do an emergency landing is wires.
That's when I grabbed my phone and started recording the plane.
James just makes it under the wire, but he isn't safe yet.
I thought to myself, I hope there's nothing else in my way, and sure enough, there's a sign literally right in front of the whole sight picture, so you could see, I forget what it said. It was just like an obstacle course, really.
I couldn't believe what was going on. It was obviously not something you see every day, especially right in front of your car, 30, 40 feet ahead of you. And it was just shocking.
The car went right under my left wing. And I didn't have any more airspeed. I had to land, so.
Holy.
The wheels hit the ground. You see the smoke when they hit the ground. I saw the traffic sign and the bridge, and I didn't think he was going to make it under that.
Landed pretty smoothly. Then the front wheel hit the crown in the road, and it kind of went like that. And I rolled under the overpass, and I had enough energy where I just pulled off to the side because I knew it was going to really screw up traffic, and that's pretty much the story. That's it.
I just slowed down, gave him plenty of room, just let him do what he had to do. It's definitely something they don't teach in driving schools, how to avoid a plane.
Awesome.
James landed safely without any injuries, and there was no damage to his Cessna 206. In fact, he seems to have rather enjoyed his unconventional highway touchdown and subsequent roadside reception.
Everybody was so cool about it. People were yelling and screaming, wanting to take pictures with me as they drove by, cheering, and it just was not the experience that I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be just miserable, negative, and it turned out to be pretty cool.
Later in the program, highway landings from around the states.
Hell no. A plane done landed on goddamn 595.
Including one pilot who was less lucky than James, and the have-a-go hero who prevented a tragedy on Interstate 405. The right-hand engine of American Airlines Flight 383 has exploded into flames shortly before takeoff at Chicago O'Hare Airport. 161 passengers are trapped on board a blazing Boeing 767. But nurse Kathy McLeod's professional instincts kick in.
I felt total calm. I remember saying to passengers, calm down. Don't rush, don't run, let's just calm down.
Kathy's a nurse, so she's accustomed to dealing with stressful situations, and she was already kind of like in take charge mode.
But she doesn't get any immediate instructions on what she should be doing.
I didn't hear any communication at all. I didn't hear anything from pilot to flight attendants.
The cabin crew are waiting for confirmation the working left-wing engine has been switched off before opening the escape doors. But passengers on board the flame-engulfed plane are starting to panic.
They were like, open these damn doors and open the door, or pushing them out of the way and trying to open the doors themselves. And there was a gentleman who was trying to open the door over the wing, and he was struggling with it.
Then another passenger steps in to help.
He was like, I got this. And he just kind of picked the door up, and whatever they do with the door just switched open. So I'm like, okay, cool.
Well, there comes the slide.
As soon as an emergency exit opens, passengers scramble to flee the flaming inferno.
And I said, get up, we gotta go.
So I said, okay. I literally reached down and picked up my purse. I thought to pick up my purse. That's kind of how calm I was.
Oh my God.
And we got to the door, and I'm literally pushing her, not trying to push her too hard. And she was like, stop pushing, and stay calm mode.
The couple escape down the slide, but unfortunately Kathy falls and injures herself.
And I was lying there, and then that's when I thought, it can blow.
And while I'm trying to help her up, I'm looking underneath the jet, and all I could see was fire. And I was like, you got to get up. We got to go. We got to go. You know, this thing is going to blow up, you know. And she said she couldn't get up.
Not only is the 767 a scorching fireball, but the second engine is not switched off before the passengers started to leave the plane.
People were evacuating on the left side of the aircraft. Unfortunately, the left engine was still running, so that's the side everyone was evacuating. It looked pretty bad from where we were at.
The turbine on the functioning engine is actually pulling Kathy back towards the blistering heat.
I just couldn't move. And my husband came back saying, we gotta go, get up, get up. And I was saying, I can't. The wind is pulling me. And unbeknownst to me, it was the turbines. But to me, in my mind, right at that moment, in real time, it was the wind pulling me.
We struggled, and I finally got her to her feet. And then we started running away from the plane. As soon as we got off the tarmac and into this grassy area, I went down. And Kathy had to stop to come back and get me up. And I told her, no, keep going. And I literally started trying to crawl away from the fire.
As I'm trying to struggle with him to get him up, 2 men came and they grabbed him under his arm and like, we're not gonna leave you, brother. And they took him off.
But as soon as Nurse Kathy knows her husband is out of danger, her attention turns to other passengers, still in harm's way.
I said, okay, he's good, he's safe, they're taking him far enough away, I gotta go back.
And then I realized all of a sudden that Kathy was not next to me. And I look up and she's walking back towards the plane.
I went back to this young lady who had been really, really crying.
So I'm sitting there, Kathy, come back here. I can laugh about it now.
I grabbed her and we walked back together.
There was still this fear that there was gonna be an explosion.
The plane continues to burn, but the fire crews are on the scene within 3 minutes of the engine failure.
Fire trucks are starting to arrive from the rear of the aircraft. There's one already there and there's another one behind it. The flames are getting bigger, spreading a little more into the aircraft. 2 more trucks arrived. Police are arriving on the scene. There's probably 100 people on the grass on the tarmac next to the airplane, kind of running away. They're spraying the foam from the front of the aircraft onto the flames now. 2 more fire trucks arrive from the rear of the aircraft. It's starting to become like a grayish white smoke as they put the flames out. More trucks are coming from another taxiway. Seems like everybody got off the aircraft at this point. And they're still fighting the flames on the right side. So at this point there's about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 trucks around the aircraft putting the fire out.
The passengers gather on a grassy bank a few hundred feet from the plane and watch the airport rescue team make the scene safe.
And then I went to where Peter was and we were taken into an ambulance.
Peter fractured his heel, one of 20 injuries suffered by the passengers that day. But it could have been so much worse if the plane had actually taken off.
We were truly blessed, as were the other 170 or so people, to get off that plane. Because if that pilot had went just a couple of more seconds and lifted off, then it would have been a totally different story. You know, I wouldn't want to think about what would have happened, but...
Oh my God, this is insane, this is insane.
Both of the McLeods have struggled to come to terms with the events of that day, and Kathy in particular has a real fear of flying.
I didn't want to see anything about airplanes, I didn't want to go on an airplane, I didn't want to look up in the air and see one.
But their marriage is stronger than ever.
I've learned a lot about my wife. I already knew that I could always count on her, but she was really brave.
February 2014, London, England. Nicole Martins has flown in from Portugal to run a stand at an exhibition of sports equipment. Husband Joa decided to come along for the ride, and after a successful trip, the two of them are heading home. It's Valentine's Day, so the couple are planning to celebrate after the short flight back.
We actually were supposed to get back to Porto at nighttime, so we figured when we got back, we'd go out in Porto and have a drink, be a little romantic.
Nicole and Joa are flying out from Stansted Airport on Ryanair flight 8347. They arrive in good time for the scheduled departure at 8:25 in the evening.
So we get there 15 minutes before 6 o'clock, so we were right on time, you know. So we had, then we proceed to the check-in area. We did it normally with no problems or whatsoever. And then we had like 2 hours before the boarding.
We got something to eat and then went to our boarding gate. And we probably waited half an hour. The line wasn't moving, and then they randomly just changed our gate.
This is a minor inconvenience, but it's just the first of a string of setbacks for the couple as they try to make their way home from London.
We were waiting online, and then when we were supposed to board and the line's not moving, people start to be like, well, we were just at one gate, you made us come to another gate, what's going on? And that's when they started saying that the plane was delayed due to bad weather conditions or wind or something like that.
After 2 hours, a new information came up. They told us that the plane had to stop in Birmingham for refuel.
And that's when they finally said, okay, so we don't really have a boarding time for you guys, just go have a coffee, watch the boards, and wait for a new time to board.
The new boarding time finally comes up at about 11:45, just over 3 hours after the scheduled departure time.
So we went back to check in to get online to board the plane, which took probably another 15 minutes to get on the plane.
The weary Ryanair customers finally board the plane nearly 4 hours late. Valentine's Day is over, and Joa and Nicole's relationship with the airline has hit a rocky patch. But the problems are only just beginning for the unlucky passengers of Flight 8347. July 2015, Hong Kong, China. Young Brit Ethan Williams is on a once-in-a-lifetime round-the-world trip. After a spell in Asia, he is flying out from Hong Kong across the Pacific Ocean to the United States.
Kind of been on quite a few flights over that trip, so it was quite kind of routine. I had my little setup, had my passport, my ticket in it, ready to show. Got sat in, settled down, and ready to take off. It was a nice takeoff. You could see lots of the city out the window, and it's a nice smooth takeoff and nothing out of the ordinary.
Cathay Pacific flight CX884 is an overnighter, so Ethan soon dozes off, but comes round after about 8 hours.
I got up and went to the bathroom, and it was on my way out of the bathroom, I kind of looked around and saw that there wasn't air hostesses or anything, and there was a beeping sound going from one of the doors. I started to walk back to my seat, and it was when I saw someone rushing towards the front of the plane, and then I think there was a call for the lead flight attendant to go to the cockpit. And at that point I knew that something wasn't quite right.
The young Brit decides to film the disturbing drama now unfolding on board the Boeing 777.
And I actually kind of took out my phone and started recording it more as maybe a distraction to what was happening, and just, something to do whilst it was waiting, and then it kind of developed in more, and I just continued recording.
Okay, so I'm not sure what's happening, but there's something going on this flight. All the flight attendants are running around like crazy. There's warning signs going off. Hopefully it's nothing too bad, and I think we're right, but I don't know, we'll see.
The cabin crew have smelt smoke, but cannot identify the source of the problem.
What is smoke? It's something that has to do with fire, right? So we can manage a fire that we can see and know where it's coming from. We can't manage a fire that we cannot figure out where it's coming from. So they have all of these passengers on board, and a smoke situation that they cannot control. They have to land the airplane.
The pilot knows that she has smoke in the cabin but can't access the fire, so she has to prepare for the worst.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to do an emergency landing, and it might be necessary for us to make an emergency ditching.
Yeah, so the pilot at this point is telling us that it's going to be an emergency landing and that it may be necessary for us to ditch in the ocean. So it's really at this point that I know it is quite serious, and obviously the ditching in the ocean's the thing that I know is not going to end well. So at this point we are pretty much halfway across the flight, so we're what I perceive to be the middle point, and there was nothing but ocean around us. I remember actually looking on the in-flight map to see where we were, and yeah, there was nothing but ocean around us.
And a nighttime sea landing on the icy waters of the North Pacific is not a comforting prospect.
My understanding of landing into the ocean was it was more of a crash as opposed to a landing.
It's estimated that 30 commercial aircraft have ditched at sea over the last 40 years, with a fatality rate of more than a third and over 300 deaths.
Pilots are not experts at landing in a sea state. We're just not. We know that we have to land perpendicular to a sea squall, but we do not practice landing on water because that is so far-fetched.
And the odds of coming out alive from a forced water landing in the low temperatures of the North Pacific are even lower.
I kind of knew if you did survive the initial impact on the ocean, that once you got out of the plane, the water was still going to be very cold and you're likely to freeze to death before anyone could actually get to you to rescue you.
So Ethan starts to plan his survival strategy.
So I actually picked up the safety information card in front of me and started reading through everything. I was definitely planning my exit route. I was next to one of the doors. I knew exactly how I was getting off that plane and I was ready to if I needed to.
With fire raging uncontrollably in an inaccessible area of the plane, the crew start to run through the emergency procedures for a forced sea landing.
I think at this point the air hostesses who's actually stood right beside me, she's telling us to get our life vest out from underneath the seat. In my mind it was going to be kind of a fabric mesh that I was feeling for, but when I was actually feeling it was a plastic box. I had to pull this box and break it down, and within that was a vacuum sealed actual life vest which I had to tear open. It was kind of a bit of a surreal experience tearing it open, because once you ruptured that seal that it was you'd use that life vest and it was going to be going on you, and it was very strange to actually be pulling it over your head, and then when you look around and you see everyone else sat there in these bright yellow life vests as well.
Ethan Williams is flying thousands of feet above the icy waters of the Pacific Ocean. As smoke spreads into the cabin, the crew prepare the 276 passengers for the terrifying prospect of a forced landing on open sea in the dead of the night.
When you hear the face, put your hands on the leg, and then
14th of February 2014. Young Portuguese couple Nicole and Joa's Valentine's Day plans have been ruined by a delay to their Ryanair flight from Stansted to their hometown of Porto. The couple finally boarded their plane just after midnight, 4 hours late.
Everybody took their seats, strapped in, just regular getting on a plane and putting your seatbelts on and telling us what the rules and regulations are. And then we just sat there for a while, probably like an hour, and everyone's like, are we gonna leave? Or are we just gonna sit here? What's going on? Why is there delay?
Excuse me.
The passengers on the 737 can only hold tight and wait for something to happen.
People started demanding that the captain say something like, what's going on? Are we taking off today? Are we just gonna sit here? How long is this gonna take? What's going on?
Finally, the captain has some good news. The passengers will be allowed to return to the terminal building.
We've now contacted our handling agent for the aircraft now so they can open up the arrivals door. Once they're here, you'll be free to leave the aircraft, take your bag and go through arrivals.
But even this is a false dawn. The passengers are actually forced to stay on the plane in lockdown conditions.
We are not allowed as well to use the toilets, okay? And we are not also allowed to buy any food or drinks.
What do we do with the kids?
What about the kids on here?
There's an infant baby, there's little babies on board.
So basically, we're in the middle of a runway. We can see the airport, and we can see that the airport is completely dark. There's no ground crew anywhere. There's no lights.
Then the pilot pops up with another announcement.
The captain finally said that he was waiting to be refueled. And we thought that was pretty funny because one of the excuses they gave us in the airport about all the delays we were having besides weather condition was that our plane had to go stop in Birmingham to be refueled. It's just bizarre. So then we kind of like were just on the plane. Just everyone was just not understanding why we're just sitting there.
Não há nada para comer ou para beber? Hã? Isto não é?
Meanwhile, the cabin crew launch a work to rule.
I believe there was two stewards, and only one of them was really responding to us. And it got to a point where we were like, are you going to do anything? Can we pay for food? Can you at least give us a glass of water? And he just said, well, now I can't really do anything because my shift is actually over. So we were like, so you're just gonna stand there and look at us? And he's like, yeah. And that's literally what he did. He just stood by the captain or the pilot's door and just stopped talking to us. So just like staring at us.
Ryanair say that they provided water to passengers. At 3:15 in the morning, nearly 7 hours after the plane was scheduled to leave, and after 3 hours in confined conditions on an airplane, the passengers decided to alert the authorities.
We started calling the police because we really didn't know what to do.
I think the first few times they didn't believe us.
What did the police say to you? What did you tell him that the airline's been lying to us the whole time? Did they just give us excuses?
The police said the same thing. They've been telling us that it's for security.
It's not security reasons though. They can't keep us on an airplane for over 3 hours.
Because they probably thought it was a prank. They really didn't believe that like people were stuck on a plane at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Finally, somebody got through and they said, okay, fine, we're gonna send a car over to the airport. Although this seems ridiculous, we're gonna send somebody just so you guys stop calling.
Police. That's the police outside.
Ryanair say that the pilot also contacted police. They eventually arrive at 3:25 and seem nearly as bewildered as the passengers about what is going on.
2 policemen came onto the plane and started telling us like, okay, so we had to break into the airport to get over here to this plane, but we do understand that the airport is closed. And if we can't get answers within the next, I think it was like 15 minutes or something, we're gonna have to break into the airport to let you guys in.
The police had contacted the duty manager at Stansted Airport.
Giving them a time frame.
And say that they promised to return the passengers to the terminal by one means or another in the next 15 minutes.
We're going to let you go back into the terminal building itself, into a restricted area which is airside, so you can get to the toilet, you can get refreshments. Unfortunately, there's nowhere actually open.
The passengers are still not able to escape from the airport as a whole.
Give you a chance to stretch your legs.
By hook or crook, the police are able to get the passengers back into the terminal.
So when we got into the airport, we heard like the alarms going off from them breaking into the airport. So it was kind of weird. It was a bizarre situation.
Does anybody know what time it is?
No, it says on my thing. It says on my tablet.
It's 10 to 4.
I can't really. Like these.
Somebody came and gave us like vouchers to go get another coffee and like go into the actual airport where there was like one coffee place open still, because everything else in the airport was basically closed, and it was just a weird vibe to be in an airport that was completely empty and just waiting to see when we'd be able to leave again.
So we were sitting in the cafe right next to the board, waiting for informations about our next flight, because we were told to do this, but that information never came up.
Our flight wasn't on any board, so we went to the information desks to ask, you know, what's going on with our flight, and they were like, your flight took off already.
The Ryanair flight had left at 7:50, leaving several of the original passengers behind at Stansted. They had to leave the departure lounge and check in on a new Ryanair flight at a high cost in duty-free purchases.
There are passengers with us that had bought whiskey, chocolates in the duty-free shop. So they are not allowed to take this with them again in this check-in phase. So they have to leave what they bought before at this check-in gate.
We got on the plane probably around 8 o'clock, took off at like 10 o'clock in the morning. So we were on the plane for another 2 hours and then took off and got to Porto at about 12 o'clock in the afternoon.
Joa and Nicole finally arrived back in Porto about 13 hours later than scheduled. Their romantic celebrations are ruined and they can't raise a glass for Valentine's Day for another 12 months. Ryanair apologises to the passengers on the flight, but explains that the problems were caused by weather disruption and a subsequent fueling delay, and that their pilot requested access for the passengers to the terminal from their local handling company Swissport after they had been on the plane for 2 hours. Swissport said they regretted the delay to passengers and that they were disappointed they fell short of their usual high standards. The couple heard nothing from the airline and were only able to get their money back with the involvement of an online compensation company.
The only people that helped us was AirHelp. They refunded our tickets. Ryanair did not contact us at all. Didn't apologize, didn't give us a refund, didn't try to do anything whatsoever.
June 2017, Los Angeles, California. A new chapter is written in one of the wildest traditions of American aviation. It's estimated that there are over a dozen aircraft landings on US highways every year. In fact, there is even an urban myth that freeways in America are built with a straight mile in every 5, so they can be used as emergency landing strips.
Hell no.
Some pilots land safely.
A plane done landed on goddamn 595.
Some pilots miss the road altogether. But one incident near Los Angeles on Freeway 405 stands out because of the bravery of one man. It's just after 9 a.m. on Friday, June the 30th, 2017. Off-duty fire captain John Meffert is heading home after a 24-hour shift.
I was on my phone with my father, and I just looked out, and here I see this plane very low, and I tell him, like, wow, this plane's like super low.
The plane's right engine has failed. It crashes out of the sky and collides with John's vehicle.
So I literally had the plane come across the front of my car, and then I clipped the left wing, and then I spun the plane flat all the way across the freeway.
The firefighter watches in horror as the Cessna 310 bursts into flames on the tarmac.
I was thinking already, like, there's no way someone's going to be alive in that plane, especially with a horrific explosion.
He leaps out of his car and runs to help.
I'm looking at a plane that is on fire. Both sections of the wing are in flame.
Yo, move back, because if there's gasoline, you don't want nothing to explode, any reserve tanks or anything.
And as I'm briskly running initially, but seeing the passenger's head pop up really made me run much faster. And it turns out to be the pilot's wife, and made my way to her, and I got her back to the median and came back and grabbed him and pulled him out of the plane.
Just breathe, it's okay, you're okay.
Both of the passengers are now recovering from their injuries, but it's all in a day's work for the humble hero of Highway 405.
I mean, it's the work I do, so, you know, the credit is very nice, but I don't look at it as like I did anything extraordinary. It's something that I think anybody in the right position would probably help and stop to do. And I feel very grateful that I was able to render aid, and then they're safe and alive.
"29th of July 2015. A fire has broken out in a cooling fan in an inaccessible cargo compartment on a Boeing 777 midway between Hong Kong and Los Angeles. There is smoke in the cabin, and the captain has told the passengers to put on their life jackets in preparation for an emergency sea landing. Ethan Williams is recording the whole terrifying ordeal on his phone.
So it was actually dark, and I remember looking outside of the window, and you could see that they were jettisoning some fuel out of the side of the wing.
The forces on the landing gear of a plane are much greater during touchdown than takeoff. So most commercial aircraft are not designed to withstand the weight of a fully fueled plane when they come into land.
The wing holds all the fuel. And that structure is set up to a specific weight and bending motion. Well, with that much fuel landing that airplane, it's too much for that. You must get rid of that gas. If you have to either dump it or burn it off. So that's an absolute requirement.
When I saw the fuel coming out, I'd say it kind of reaffirmed that we were in a real situation, and I realised it was going to be quite serious. Yeah, I think we were sat there at this point for maybe kind of around about 10-15 minutes, and then the pilots come over the radio, and you could definitely tell she was a lot calmer in her voice.
And we are anticipating a normal landing, so I want to reiterate it will be a normal landing.
The pilot tells the passengers they are setting course for a US military airbase on Shemya, a tiny weather-beaten island more than 1,000 miles from Anchorage in Alaska.
I remember not knowing where this place was, and just thinking, right, great, it's a land, doesn't really matter where it is, what it is, as long as we can land normally there. We started to look for where this island was on the map, and you could kind of see this island kind of appearing and getting a bit closer. It was kind of just a relief to know that there was actually some land around us, somewhere we could potentially have a normal landing.
So that's really good news, guys. We're diverting to Shemya, and it's going to be a normal landing, not a water landing. So that's really good news.
This is a huge relief to Ethan, but also a big surprise. He hasn't expected that a flight from Hong Kong to Los Angeles will go anywhere near Alaska. The reason it did is mainly because of the way flight paths are plotted to account for the curvature of the globe.
If you look at a map, a flat map, and you draw a line between Hong Kong and Los Angeles, you go straight across the water, and it's like, that makes sense. But you look at a globe and you draw a straight line from Hong Kong to LA, and then you take it off the globe and then flatten it out, it's an arch. So it's called the Great Circle Route. If you looked at that on the Great Circle, it's not that far from Alaska in the first place.
The plane makes its final approach to the remote Alaskan island.
At this point, we're actually going down quite fast. I can feel the air pressure changing, my ears are popping quite severely. It's actually quite painful.
Flight CX-884 is still overburdened with fuel, so the captain prepares the passengers for a potentially perilous landing.
Can you hear the face?
So as we were coming down, it was still pretty dark. You couldn't really see much of anything out the window. I think they told us that there was a chance of the brakes catching fire because of how heavy we were on landing. When we landed, it was quite a rough impact. We landed quite hard, and it was actually very heavy on the brakes as well. And it was just an absolute mass of lights flashing towards us and rushing around.
The brakes and the rest of the plane survive. But it's not over yet. The 276 passengers are now stranded on a 2x4 mile island at a largely inactive military airbase with nothing to do and nowhere to go but the plane itself. Ethan sets about editing a video of his flight from hell.
So I thought, well, I can kill this time. I have my laptop with me, I have the footage. Let's start editing it and finalise the video within a couple of hours of being there.
Ethan and the rest of the passengers then fly the 1,500 miles to Anchorage in the same plane they just limped into the airport on 6 hours earlier.
That we didn't know what the issue was on the plane, and then they were still flying on the same plane. And actually when we took off, you could smell some burning. And then when we finally landed in Anchorage in Alaska, it was, okay, right, we're done with this plane, let's get off it. And it was a huge sense of relief to kind of be off and at least somewhere where we were back on relatively normal land.
The weary passengers board a new plane, then finally arrive in Los Angeles some 17 hours later than planned. After touchdown, Ethan posts online the video of flight CX-884 that he edited in Shemya Airport and creates an internet sensation.
I think within the first few hours it had a couple of 100,000 views, and it shortly progressed over that time, so I think it's now around about 4.5 million views.
We've landed. Yes. Down.